Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joe Peterburs.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And the first thing I want to do is thank Rob Collins of the Collins Foundation for the wonderful ride I had in the Texan. Rob is just a superb pilot. We went up and did a bunch of loops, a lot of things, which brought me back some 80 years when I was young and spry and able to do the flight myself. Rob asked me if I wanted to take the controls, and I knew I could do a couple of half-assed rolls and maybe even a half-assed loop, but if I can't do it right, I didn't want to do it. But I enjoyed his work, and it was just beautiful. And I want to thank you, and this marvelous affair that they put on is just heartwarming for an old pilot.
It was a real treat for us to have you fly in the Texan. Hopefully someday you can fly in one of our Mustangs as well. And if you could, maybe you could share with the audience kind of where you started in World War II, a little bit of your training, and then to the meat and potatoes of getting after that 262 and what had transpired just after you shot at the 262. Little twist in your plan, I think it was. And yeah, so tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, number one, on the 7th of December 1941, I was 17 years old, and I was in the Salvatorian Seminary in St. Asia, Wisconsin, studying to be a priest. And when I heard the news that Pearl Harbor had been bombed, I knew right then that I'd be leaving the seminary and joining the armed forces in some capacity to fight for my country. So I finished this semester and then went and tried to get into the Navy at 17, and they wouldn't take me by something was wrong with my eyes, but I don't think so. Anyway, at 18, I took the competitive examination that the United States Army Air Corps was providing for aviation, the Aviation Cadet Program. I took it under my 18th birthday, the 25th of November, 1942, and was sworn in and passed it. Was sworn in on the 30th of November, November 1942. And then from there, my training started. My first training was at Maxwell. What they did, Maxwell was our first base in Alabama, and it was a ground school. We learned the basics of aeronautics and the Morse code and things like that. It was about a month school, and then I was transferred to Douglas Field, Georgia, to fly the Stearman, and you all have seen fly out here, and it's on display. And checked out in that in 6 hours. So I had an affinity for flying, and I really enjoyed it. I went through primary with flying colors. Never made a ground loop, which PT-17 is noted for. And with about 65 hours, I graduated to basic training, which is the BT-13 we called it the multi-vibrator, because and it was a little more sophisticated than the PT-17. And then from there, I went to the Texan, the T6. And this was the last phase of your training. And the competition was really, really stiff. There was no room for air, because they wanted to make sure that you were capable of the job at hand. before they give you those wings in the commission. Well, I passed all that, and on the 15th of April of 1944, I graduated as second lieutenant fighter pilot at 19 years old. And after graduation, I got further training in the P-40. They had replacement RTUs, replacement training units, where people would go, the pilots would go to get check out in the combat aircraft that they'd be flying. So I went to Page Field in Florida, and there were about 7 fields there, and all of them had P-51s except mine, and it was a P-40. But anyway, I got about 145 hours in the P-40 and was shipped off to England, where I was assigned to the 55th Fighter Squadron of the 20th Fighting Group. And they were flying P-51s. I'd never seen a P-51 before, so this is but having flown the P-40, which is all very similar characters, there was nothing to check out. We read the manual and learned how to start it, and then took off and flew. So I checked out in the P-51, and then got about 20 hours in it, learning the various tactics for escorting B-17s and what the capabilities of the enemy aircraft were, where they were located, and where the hot spots were as far as flak and anti-aircraft guns. So after about 20 hours, then I flew my first mission on the 12th of December of 1944, and it was basically a mission in the target northern Germany. It was what we call the milk run, heavy flak over the target, but there was no enemy action as far as the Luftwaffe was concerned. I went on to fly 48 more missions, and some of them very memorable. Escorting 2,000 bombers with 900 fighters and targets, various targets in central Germany and Berlin and so on, and being hit by 200 and 300 Focke-Wulf 190s and ME-109s, and lots of air battles and this sort of thing. And then I did a lot of ground strafing. We'd go down on fighter sweeps where we would look for targets of opportunity, as well as being briefed on fighter sweeps where we were in specific targets. Usually they were airfields that would go down the street. And cumulative missions, I had 267 combat hours, and my 49th mission on the 10th of April of 1945. And it just come to mind, we've been looking at the Fiesler Storch out there, and you've been talking a lot about it. And I just remembered that I had an encounter with a Fiesler Storch. It was on the 24th of March of 1945, and we were flying cover for the troops crossing the Remagen bridgehead. And it was my longest day. I flew 2 missions that day. I had 9 hours and 45 minutes of combat time that day. And I was about 400 feet patrolling the bridge, and and it was an evening dusk, and out of the dusk I saw this little aircraft. I could tell it was an observation aircraft immediately, and it floated by me. I was going the opposite direction, so I pulled that thing around and tried to get around. But by the time I got around to where I could have shot him, he was gone. He disappeared. He probably put those flaps and everything that they've been showing you down and landed someplace. Anyway, that was just sort of an aside. And then on the 10th of April of 1945, I was escorting the 8th Air Force put up a really big force of a couple of thousand bombers and again about 1,000 fighters. And we were bombing about 6 targets in the northeast part of Germany: Berlin, Potsdam, Magdeburg, Brandenburg, and our target, our group was escorting, was Oranienburg, which is just north of Berlin. And I was flying, and there were about 250 B-17s in that raid, and we had about 450 bombers, B-17s, and then about 250 fighters escorting them. And I was flying high cover at about 30,000 feet, and everything was uneventful until we got over target, and bombardiers started dropping their bombs, and I saw a gaggle of Me-262s coming in. And there were about 8 of them, and I latched out my eyeballs onto one of them, and he pulled into a B-17 and blew in, and I'd already, as soon as I saw him and latched onto him as a target, I started down after him, and by the time I got down to him, pulling into a 6 o'clock position, I started firing, got some hits of the left engine, and saw some smoke and some fire coming out, and then simultaneously he blew up his second B-17. So anyway, he rolled over and started down to the deck, and I was chasing him down, and we got down to about 3,000 feet, and there was a low stratosphere of clouds, and he disappeared into that layer of clouds, and I wasn't going to follow him there. There was nothing. I would be able to find him, whatever. And he was burning and had smoke coming out of his engine, but I didn't claim him or anything because I didn't know that whether he got in. You had to be positive that the aircraft went in before you could claim. Anyway, I take a look over and I see this airfield which is a really, really good target. It's just full of German aircraft, and I think, well, I'll get them by surprise. I get down to grass cutting level and come tearing in, throttle wide open, and I started strafing it. Well, when Doolittle came over, he changed the whole tactics of the air war. Prior to his arrival, it was primarily the fighters were there protecting the bombers, which they were doing very well. They were losing a lot of bombers. And he said that the only way we're going to attain air superiority is to destroy the Luftwaffe. So he concentrated on destroying the Luftwaffe, so a lot of our missions were directed at fighter sweeps attacking airfields. And so the Germans, of course, they really put in heavy defenses on all the airfields. So the adage for the fighter pilot back then was one pass and haul ass, because if you try any more, you're going to get it. Well, I didn't heed that advice, and I made 5 passes, which was stupid, but I did destroy 5 aircraft on the ground, and started a hangar on fire. And on the last pass, I was going in on an FW-200, a Focke-Wulf 200, which is the 4-engine type of aircraft, and it was actually part of Hitler's fleet. And as I was coming in, I felt a thud, and then blew the FW-200, and it blew up, and I was coming off a target, and I felt another thud, and then I started getting oil on the windscreen, and so I knew I was hit bad, and I kind of gained as much altitude as I could. I got up to about 10,000 feet. And there I had to make a decision. I was near Berlin, Oranienburg is just north of Berlin, and I could go there and bail out, hopefully get captured or get picked up by the Russians, or head west and join up with the American forces, which we were briefed were fighting in Magdeburg. and that was about 80 miles away. So I decided, I took that option and started going towards Magdeburg. And I got about, 25 miles from Magdeburg, and I was down to 1,000 feet, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to make it, so I decided to start to bail out. So I unhooked myself, unstrapped, and was getting ready to bail out, and then I was attacked by an FW-190. And it came in at me, and I turned into him. And as I turned into him, he missed, his rockets missed, and his gunfire missed, but he just kept going on because I was burning on the right side, and he probably thought I was gone for it anyway. So anyway, okay, I'm out of that mess, now what do I do? And I'm too low to bail out, I'm down to 500 feet, I'm too low to bail out, I'm gonna have to belly this thing in. Now, you've got to realize this is all milliseconds training and everything else riding around in your mind. And so I think I can't belly this thing in. I'm unstrapped, I'll kill myself. I can't hit the ground at over 100 miles an hour and expect to survive that if I'm not strapped in. So I'm going to have to bail out. So I'm down to 500 feet now, and so I pull out. I can't go out the right side because the right side is burning, and you're supposed to go out to the right side because if you go out the right side, then you'll be thrown away from the aircraft because of the torque. If you go out the left side, you get thrown into the aircraft because of the torque. So I had to go out the left side. So I go out the left side and let go around 350 feet, and my right knee hits the horizontal stabilizer, and then I pull the ripcord, and the chute opens and swings once and hits the ground hard. So now I'm on the ground, and I'm laying there, and with a hurting back and legs and stuff, and I got to get up and see what my situation is. I see what there's chances of invading and that sort of stuff. So I get up and I see I'm in acres and acres and acres of farmland, and coming at me about 50 yards away was a group of about 15 Germans, battered all hell and ready to do me in. They get within about 20 yards of me, and then I hear this noise come in behind me, and I turn over and look, and it's a Luftwaffe sergeant on a motorcycle, and he pulls in right next to me, stops, gets off, pulls the Luger out, and pops off a shot in the air and tells the civilian that I'm his target. I'm his prisoner. And so he saved me there. Then the big bucks from town, the Burgermeister, the chief of police, and some of the other people, they driven out, and they talked to the sergeant, and they wanted to interrogate me, so they brought me in town and started interrogating me. Chief of police wanted to shoot me on the spot. The people were gathering outside, making lots of noise and getting ready to storm the area I was. And the sergeant says, "Come on," and puts me on his motorcycle. He goes. There was a big base station located at Bird, and he took me there on the motorcycle, and I got put in the local prison, and then a couple of Gestapo came in and started questioning me, and primarily they were trying to find out what mission I was on, because I bailed out over Berg in the Berg area. In the Magdeburg area, and that was one of the targets in Berlin and Potsdam, and then of course I was from Brandenburg. So they finally stopped after some intense questioning. No, nothing physical, anything like that, and they, I guess, come to the conclusion that I was on the Magdeburg raid, and that's what I wanted them to think. So that they let me know. But then I was there for another 3 days, and every night Bern had a large Luftwaffe base, and it was doing a lot of experimental testing with the aircraft. And every night, the good old RAF was over there bombing the place, and I was in the bomb shelter with about 50 Germans, and it was a little uneasy. But anyway, on the 13th of April, 3 days later, they take me to the rail station, and they're putting me on a train and taking me to Stalag 8, which was a British POW camp, had about 8,000 prisoners. But when we got there, we found out that most of the prisoners had been evacuated and going east, and there were still about 100 Tommies left. And so the next morning, the British and I were all gathered together, and we started on a forced march back towards Berlin. And that lasted about 5 days. And we got to Berlin area, to Luckenwalde, Stalag 3, which was a Russian POW camp. And it was just loaded with Russian POWs. So I was there for about a week, and then the security was lax and getting more lax as the war came closer to an end. And so I decided to escape, and I escaped and started towards Berlin, hoping to join up with the Russians, which I did. After about 5 miles from the camp, I ran into a Russian tank unit heading west, and through some type of communications, I don't know what it was. I'm sure I could speak some German. I'm sure they could. Europeans could usually speak 3 or 4 languages. I was able to communicate my situation, and they said, the lieutenant running the column said, hop on the tank and give me a gun. And we started towards Wittenberg on the Elbe. He said that was their target. So we went through Jitterbug and had some skirmishes there, and took the town of Jitterbug, and then went up towards Magdeburg, and we were in Magdeburg after about 6-7 days on the march. I mean on the adventure, and we're bivouacked outside of Wittenberg, and a Army patrol, U.S. Army patrol, came across the Elbe to meet the Russians. And during the course of this meeting, they saw me and they talked to the lieutenant. He was reluctant to let me go with them, but he finally did give in. And as you know, during that time period, the Potsdam Conference is going on, and the tensions between Russia and the United States was getting a little edgy, and so they probably wanted to hold me back for some reason or other. Anyway, I was released to the Army, and they were on station at Halle, and they were on patrols, cleaning up various towns and collecting weapons and stuff like that. I stayed with them for about 3 days, and then took off from Halle and started walking west. And after a while, I got to a open field, and it had a C-47 located there. And there were, outside the C-47, there were about 15 people, guys in striped uniforms, prisoners, and emaciated, like Walking Dead, just skin and bone, and completely in shock. And I went to the pilots of the aircraft and asked what was going on, and he said they're taking these prisoners, these released prisoners, back to Paris for repatriation. And I knew nothing about the Holocaust, nor did the pilots. They thought they were political prisoners. But anyway, we found out later that they were all Holocaust, and it was just and they said they're going to Paris. I said, well, that sounds like a good ride. I'd go back to Paris with them. So I went and hopped in and went back to Paris, and there was no communication. The people that they had picked up were just completely you could see it in their eyes. They just was in disbelief of what their situation was, and they were, most of them were really close to death. And so it was really a traumatic experience, but an eye-opening one. We get to Paris, so in Paris I get stamped and deloused and put under control, and now I'm an official POW, returned POW, so I can't do my any wandering anymore. So I'm stuck as a POW, and at that time the Army had set up a bunch of camps through France for repatriated U.S. POWs, and they named them after cigarettes: Camp Chesterfield, Camp Marlborough, and Camp Lucky Strike. And I went to Camp Lucky Strike, which was near Le Havre, and after a few days there, I boarded a ship and came back to the States, and landing in New York on the 1st of June of 1945, and from there went to by train back to Fort Sheridan. I was from Milwaukee area, and so I went to Fort Sheridan and for a couple of days of processing, and then I was given a rest and recuperation leave of 60 days, and got home, and my wife, my fiance Josephine, who I named my aircraft after, was anxiously awaiting for my return and our marriage and this sort of stuff, and there was a lot of paperwork involved, and in this paperwork was a requirement that I get my mom's permission to get married because I hadn't turned 21 yet. So anyway, Josephine and I got married, and we had a beautiful 60 years of marriage. She passed in 2005.